We're now an urban species. More than 50% of the planet is living in cities now. 1 million more people pour into cities every week. So whatever we're going to do on this planet, the solution has to come from the cities. We have to figure out a new way to design our cities that we can survive the current problems we've created with them. In the cities where we live, these unnatural, artificial, manufactured environments, in the last few generations only, we're kind of removed from the natural cycles and flows of things around us that we used to have as a part of normal living. I call guerrilla gardening gardening public space with or without permission, and public space turns out to be a little more difficult to nail down than we might think. I like to think that it doesn't really matter anyway for the guerrilla gardeners, because we all share these spaces environmentally, and because all of these places are linked, we know now, in important ways, some of which we understand, some of which we don't, but we know the air, the water, everything in it is joined together in one ecosystem. They're all spaces that are shared. So for the guerrilla gardener, it's all public space. So that may mean any area that's not being well tended or being abused or neglected is ripe for improvement. So whether it's behind a fence, whether it's on someone's property, whether it's the bank parking lot, doesn't really matter so much on whose it may be, but how does that affect us all in an environmental sense? And if there's a way to improve it, then let's do it. Guerrilla gardening comes in all forms. People do it in so many different ways. It's really a creative, artistic sort of approach to the environment. The seed bombs are one really fun one, and that was started by the folks in New York who, because some areas were fenced off by the owners, wanted to keep these renegades out. They realized that if they just found a way to loft the seeds over that fence, wherever they hit, they would explode into seeds that would then grow. Guerrilla gardens themselves can go through a lot of phases. Often they will be temporary. You never know when you plant a seed how well it's going to do. A lot of seeds will just not take. It's how it happens in nature. One acorn may turn into an oak forest. So the Strathcona Community Gardens is in the downtown east side of Vancouver, which is the poorest postal code district in Canada, and has HIV/AIDS rates comparable to Botswana. People are doing really great work and a lot of really interesting community stuff going on, and one of them is the Strathcona Community Gardens. It was started about 20 years ago on land that it was owned by the park board and was designated to be a park at some time, but had been that way for 30 or 40 years. So They weren't putting it into a park. It's a poor neighborhood, and that wasn't their priority, perhaps, to make parks there. So a group of citizens in the area thought it would be better used as a community space for people to grow organic food. Something that was sorely needed by the residents of the area. The city's response, whenever they asked for anything, was invariably no. They heard no, no, no constantly, but because they're not the type of community to just take that line down, they went ahead and did it anyway, and now you see the city taking credit for what a great space it is, and when they have conferences and the city has to report on what they're doing, they'll say our Strathcona Community Gardens, solar-powered home, a composting toilet, the first licensed one in the city, a grey water filtration system, more than 300 types of organic fruit trees, and an urban wildlife habitat. All these great things that the city will take credit for, and that's great. Let them do it as long as the gardeners get to keep it. The latest battle was just last year over the lease, over how long they would get to keep it, because land pressures are always an issue, but the gardeners struggled again. It took about 2 years this time, but just got an extra 20-year lease, so things are good for at least the next generation. So the community garden becomes something like the climax stage of the Guerrilla Garden. And a climax stage in an ecosystem is one where all the plants that have had their battles and their struggles over what kind of an ecosystem this is going to be have finished those struggles. So it turns into, say, a Douglas fir forest or a hemlock forest. And then we'll get the old growth that can survive for hundreds, even thousands of years.